Hello and welcome back. We are doing another 2023 top 10, and as I mentioned in yesterday's video, which was 2023 top 10 adapted screenplays, today's category should be really obvious as it's 2023 top 10 original screenplays. So this is just I'm making my own determinations. I'm like the Oscars. I'm just doing wild things. It's funny because I found out that May December was actually based on the same person wrote like a story or whatever, and then it made it into a screenplay. And it's like, I'm surprised that the Oscars didn't use that as an adaptation. Why isn't May December an adapted screenplay? You know, Air is based on a shoe. You know, I don't know. So, as best as I can tell, these are original screenplays. Um, so let's go. Top 10 adapted, original screenplays. Adapted winner yesterday, by the way, in case you are too lazy to watch my video that I spend hours upon hours creating and editing and remixing, and clearly lots of time goes into my videos, was All the Strangers. So I like to spread the love. If you've actually been watching all my videos, you'll notice that I'm not giving like the same films awards across the board. So maybe that'll happen again here. Number 10, we've got Christopher Baldoni for Dream Scenario. Yes. Definitely just a great concept, great idea, sharp writing. Has a lot to say about cancel culture, but also just a really interesting concept. And this snuck into my list. I've just seen this recently, and just barely got in there. But if you haven't seen Dream Scenario yet, you know, it's because A24 felt like campaigning other films, and poor Dream Scenario just didn't get out there in time to get campaigned. So, moving on up the list, number 9. Jewel Taylor for They Clone Tyrone. This was just a fantastic film all around, and really underrated, and kind of disappointing that Netflix just dropped Barbenheimer weekend. I think they thought they had just a dud on their hand. I'm really proud of the couple critics groups who have recognized They Clone Tyrone for anything, and remembered it at the end of the year, and also especially the ones who recognize Jamie Foxx's performance and supporting actor. I just think that's an interesting choice, an interesting nomination. So I'm putting it here in my top 10 original screenplays. Moving on up the list, number 8 is Wes Anderson's Asteroid City. I don't necessarily love the film, but I love this, his writing, his screenplay here. I feel like he challenged himself with Asteroid City. He continues to try to evolve, even if it's in like ever so slight directions. There somewhat feels a little introspective. Feels like something he wrote during COVID, and had a lot of thoughts also about himself, and wanted to put those on the screen. It's an interesting film. It's just not my favorite Wes Anderson film, but I think he makes a lot of risks and changes here that he hasn't been making. Something like The French Dispatch to me felt totally safe. Meanwhile, this feels like Wes Anderson wants to evolve. He just doesn't really know what into, or into what. So, yeah, I want to recognize the screenplay that he came up with for Asteroid City, even if it's not necessarily the most rewarding film experience of the year. I really like the fact that he challenged himself, and I think there's a great concept that he came up with here. So, moving up the list to number 7 is Celine's Song for Past Lives. You might have thought this was going to be higher on the list, based on, if you watched yesterday's video when I talked about All of Us Strangers, I also mentioned Past Lives, And one of the brilliant things that Singing Song does with Past Lives is that she taps into this idea that we have somebody from our childhood that comes in, and we're there for in the childhood, and it seems like it's everything. When you're a kid, your best friend is everything, or your first crush is everything, or whatever it is. It just dominates your thoughts, and you don't really have a whole lot to worry about, like a job and paying rent and a career and family, babies, and all that stuff. So it's really easy to just envelop yourself in that. So what happens when you grow up and you can reach out to that person again? And I think regardless of, take Korean out of this, take love out of this, I think the reason why Past Lives is hitting so many people is because we all have somebody who we haven't seen in a long time, and we all thought about going on Facebook and being like, huh, let's see if we can find that person. I imagine Past Lives caused a lot more people to try to find that person who it would have seemed like maybe it's a little too creepy, maybe it's been a little too long, but that's what Facebook is for. Because really, in this day and in this film, it has been a while, and it's weird to reach out to somebody after like 15, 20 years and be like, hey, you remember me? What I was thinking about you. It's like, wow, thank you, sir. But it's possible that a whole bunch of people have reached out to people from 20 years ago and been like, so what are you up to now? I haven't seen you since we were 10. So, um, and for that, I applaud her. Past Lives just, it didn't hit me quite the way it needed to for it to be higher on this list, but she found commonality and brought people in, and that's an experience. And she, not only did she do that, but she brought people in and made them fall in love with a film that culturally, I think a lot of people who love this film aren't even connected to the cultural aspect of it, but they watched it anyway, and expanded their horizons, not even really understanding why it was that they were falling in love with the story they were falling in love with. So anyway, that's that's only my number seven. um, Number six, Emerald Fennel for Saltburn. This is debatable. It feels almost like it's too much of an homage to other things. Like immediately there were films that it was compared to. So I can't just go ahead and be like, number one, Saltburn. But I do really love how Fennel respects the three-act structure in a very clear way here. I mean, Saltburn is probably one of the best examples of, like, you can almost see the lines being dividing the three acts. Like, you don't need the act one, act two, act three. This doesn't need to be like Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes where it tells you where you are in the film. But you can feel the clear divisions and the shifts in the film. And there's a beginning, middle, and an end. And it's weird to it's weird to celebrate that, but there's something about how she uses that to structure the story and to structure how you perceive where Saltburn is headed. And I think it would be really interesting to see how people would react to Saltburn if social media didn't exist. Because part of the reason why Saltburn is the way that it is, and reacting to, is has a lot to do with social media driving it, and people being like, "Ooh, salaciousness! Ooh, why don't you lick that bathtub? Yeah." Like, I mean, they're taking the wrong aspects of the film and leading into it, instead of just accepting that this is a really well constructed film, from Emerald Fennell, that tells a story maybe that we've seen a little bit of before, but not quite in this way. And I really appreciated what Fennell did to this. My only reservation might be that it's funny what, in this day and age, what she feels like she has to include for it to seem salacious, to feel edgy, and yet it still doesn't feel like it actually gets there. It never, to me, it never felt like it was too much. And I don't know what that says about film already and where we're at in 2023. But some of the most disturbing things I saw this year were not in Saltburn. So there's that. Moving up the list. Number 5 is Justine Triet for Anatomy of a Fall. Um, an excellently told courtroom drama, basically. This is what this is. It's well written, and Justine does an excellent job of introducing us to a character who's complex in Sandra Hüller's character, Sandra. It's interesting that she's also named Sandra. And um, we get to see her from the very beginning, and we're introduced to the scene as it is. The is it a murder or is it an accident scene? There's an excellent performance here by Milo Machado that she wrote um, for this child, and it all plays out in a courtroom, and it plays out in a way that leaves you with you being able to make up the choice, which so many directors don't like to do. But it started on the page with the script not making up that determination for you, with the script leaving you with, enough reasons why she did do it and enough reasons why she didn't do it. You know, it's really up to you. And what's so interesting is our entire legal system in America is based on reasonable doubt. So it's really testing reasonable doubt in for those people who believe that she did it, or but hasn't Justine given you reasonable doubt? I think this is an excellent screenplay, so I'm happy to have it on my list. Moving up the list, number 4 are the Chris's from Air. Christian Cantanessa and Chris Processor or whatever from Air. Uh, and yeah, uh, I I just think Air has a fire script. It's a really well told script. It's really well contained. Um, and I think it was something that was easy for Affleck to direct in many ways because of the tightness of it. Um, if I had to have like a Spirit of Aaron Sorkin award, I would give it to Air. The spirit of being able to have that kind of dialogue that fires and moves you through the film. I think Air probably was most representative of that this year, in terms of this being a dialogue heavy film where it's a lot of talking and you have to understand and get through it. A little bit like The Big Short would be sort of in that, like films that are adjacent to kind of how Sorkin always tells a story using a lot of dialogue, a lot of walk and talks, those kind of things. But yeah, I really liked Air, and I like how we were able to structure an ensemble and make it so that you understood who everybody was, why they were important to the story, why they needed to be there. They were all unique and representative of these real life people. And then obviously it ended up being great casting because everybody was able to give this script their due. So Air makes the cut. Moving up the list to number 3. We're getting close to the end, guys. Can you feel it? Number 3 is Sammy Birch for May December. What an interesting script. And I take this from the lean that this is a drama. What a bold choice to want to make a film like this, to want to tell this story, and to find it interesting enough and to try to write it from such a neutral perspective so that Natalie Portman's character can uncover it, so that the audience can uncover it. Because if you write these characters, if you write Julianne Moore instantly as being some sort of insane, crazy person, just like right up front, it puts the audience off, and it immediately, sort of like Anatomy of a Fall, would make up your mind for you. But what this screenplay does is it walks a really tight line, allowing Portman to come into their lives and for us to learn all about this story and to learn about these characters and to see them interact, and to see them interact not just with Natalie, but with each other and with the rest of their family, and to talk to the neighbors and friends, and as many people as possible, to learn about this case, so that way you have sort of like a well-rounded understanding of the situation, how it impacted people around them, There's a broad supporting cast that is often underrepresented when we talk about May December because they often only have like one scene. You know, she interviews somebody outside of the household for like one scene. You know, so it yeah, it's the whole film ends up falling on Charles Melton in the end and how he feels about his life. And I think that is where everybody's mind goes is so what are you you know how are you doing, you know? And I think it's just such an interesting screenplay from Sammy Birch, and it's not something I would have expected seeing made into a film. But we've seen this story happen in real life so many times. I'm glad that a writer who finds it intriguing to dive into the subject matter instead of finding it salacious, uh, was the one to tackle it. So, Sammy Rich, third place. Not bad. So, my number two film is one that I had just a couple little problems with, but man, when we'll fight to the death on this one, on this being original screenplay. It's Barbie. It's Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach. Yeah, I didn't give them the top spot because the one thing I wanted out of this screenplay a little bit more was Barbie to be able to explore the world without immediately going on her quest, you know, like she's the, you know, it felt like in a video game when you have side quests and you just don't do any of them and you just go kind of felt like that. Like we got a little flash of her with Ken having some experience, and then of course she sits on the bench and she like she's kind of like is upset and she kind of like cries her heart out or whatever for a second there, but she doesn't really have like a unique experience unto herself like we see with Ken, where Ken, like I love when Ken walks into the hospital and he's like, I'd like to perform a surgery. You know, it's like there's so much about that, about white male privilege, just right in that moment, that I just found to be so biting and satirical from Greta and Noah. Um, but I wanted more from that of Barbie. I felt like if we're already here, we're already in the movie, you got at least 5 minutes that you could have extended this. It's fine. The movie clips along. It's fun. It's light. It's airy. I think the audience would have sat through another 5 minutes of allowing maybe Barbie to explore one or two things in the real world, to have her in a situation where she's like, what would happen if Barbie did this? What would happen if Barbie did that? You know? And then have her uh, I don't know, something, anything, literally anything would have appeased me more and would have put this at number one. But that was my one thing is I felt like she didn't play enough with Barbie in the real world. Um, but I'm a big fan of this, and it's obviously an original screenplay. It doesn't have any of the Barbie lore to it. What basically Oscars decided this was adapted screenplay because it's based on something, which is why I make the joke. I'm like, well, Air is based on a shoe. You know, I mean, like it's a lot of things are based on something. Maestro, which it didn't make my Maestro was my number 10, and then I saw Dream Scenario, and then I bought Maestro. So if you want to know more about how close Maestro came, had I not seen Dream Scenario recently, it would have been on my list. Um, so yeah, Maestro is based on the life of a real person. A lot of things are based on things, but we still consider them original screenplays. This film is literally about the concept of Barbies being toys and being in a world in which they're living, but they're also affected, but in ways by by their owner, for lack of a better word. So whatever kid, or in Barbie's case, whatever former child owns them, whenever that person does something, it affects them. As we see with Weird Barbie, where it even has a little montage as to how Weird Barbie became Weird Barbie. Um, so it reflects that. It's not like a typical Barbie storyline. All of those little animated cartoon things that your kids have been watching for all of these years, none of that. There's no lore here. Yeah, it has like the Barbie dream house because the Barbie dream house is also shockingly a toy. You know, I mean, it's an accessory for Barbie for her, just as our, you know, the vehicles and stuff. But it's everything here is represented as a toy, being played with as a toy, not necessarily Barbie in some sort of lore that had been created for them. Like, I guess Trolls is a more of a toy that actually seems to have like a lore and welcome to Troll Land, and this is what the trolls are like. You know, it's just like that is more feels more to me like it's adapting from some sort of uh character, you know, storybook that were created for trolls. But Barbie is clearly, you know, if it's like if somebody made Slinky the movie and it just was a Slinky, and maybe it's been brought to life and it's sentient and it's roaming around the streets having an adventure unto itself, and the Academy's like, well, Slinky existed, and it's owned by a toy company, so we have to. I'm sorry, this is an adapted screenplay. You'd be like, what the fuck? It's like he's just it's not even talking. It's just roaming around the streets, like having its own adventure. So, it's just such an asinine overreach to call this adapted because clearly it's using the toy, but it's using it as a toy. Like these are dolls who are dolls. They're not using them. Mattel comes in and tries to put the doll back in the land of dolls. Like it can't be out and about. So I don't know. I know this is really long, but I feel like it just has to be said why this is an original screenplay because we're not talking about it enough, and the Oscars are just on crack, per usual. So this deserved to be an original screenplay, and it just fell short of one film for me, and one film that worked on every level it needed to work on, and that film is The Holdovers. David Hemingson's The Holdovers wins Best Original Screenplay for me. Um, what I liked about The Holdovers was the fact that it took what you think is going to be one of these "Oh Captain, My Captain" prep school drama things and flipped it. First of all, it gets rid of most of the cast real fast. So there really isn't anybody left behind for. So Giamatti isn't a teacher of many students. He quickly becomes the teacher to one student. Um, and it becomes a lot more about the unconventionality in this relationship. And Giamatti's character is different than what we've seen before in these types of roles. They go slightly spoilery, but they go quite into the fact that you know uh, he did go there, and he left and tried to go to college. That didn't work out for him, but he was intelligent, and this is his alma mater, and somebody saw something in him, and they hired him. And so he's been a professor at this school, but he doesn't actually have the credentials to teach anywhere else, which is incredibly interesting. We don't see that in these other films where you have a teacher who's not really allowed to teach, really shouldn't be teaching anywhere else, but he's um, doing a great job here. So, and then Dominic Sessa bucks the trend of being a spoiled brat, and his whole thing is being not a spoiled brat. You know, I mean, you find out how just not spoiled and how not semi charmed his life really is. On top of that, you bring in Divine Joy Randolph and her entire story and plot line having to deal with, you know, because if this was just Giamatti and Sessa at Christmas time, suddenly the film has you know a different feel and vibe to it. When you put Divine into having her celebrate her first Christmas without her son, the whole film just takes this interesting journey. It's like David Hemmingson wanted to write a prep school movie, but he didn't want to write a prep school movie that was remotely near anything else that had ever been done before. So he found a way to do that. And I think it's so creative and so original. And I ended up loving it. I love the holdovers. I love the characters he created, the world he put them in, and he's giving them excellent dialogue, depth of character, backgrounds, little moments that pay off. Also, things that are set up and then pay off later in the film. This is an excellently written screenplay, and it's my pick for best original screenplay. So there you go. That's my top 10 screenplays of the year and why I like them. So I, I will be coming back to you with another list tomorrow. And until then, I will see you guys on the other side.